Alright, welcome back to Honey Badger Arcade. So today I'm going to be looking at an article which is really great that I'm going to read through for you guys because it kind of explains like this weird thing that people seem to constantly bring up regarding Gamergate. I just watched, for example, a clip from, I didn't watch the whole thing because it was kind of long, but I watched a stream that Tachyon Blue did with a gentleman named Pixel Metal, and he was talking about like he didn't understand the relationship between men's rights activists and well, he didn't understand the relationship with the men's rights activists and Gamergate. And I think for me, it's kind of obvious stuff, right? There's a number of reasons why there would be overlap, but I think that the average Joe has been so conditioned to hate MRAs and the red pill and the broader manosphere without even like examining, like what we're actually talking about, that it just becomes like a thing that you need to dismiss right off the bat. And they started doing this when Gamergate was going on. They would write articles saying, oh, the manosphere is like involved with Gamergate. And the purpose of that was not just to sort of discredit Gamergate, but it was also to cause people that were supporting the hashtag to move away from it, because the last thing they wanted to be associated with were these gross men's rights activists, which are now, we just call them incels, even though those two things are not really the same, but it's just a better, more useful slur at the moment. And so I'm going to read this article. This comes from a website called end2dv.org, that is Coalition to End Domestic Violence. And here is the article. It is entitled Cancel Culture. So it's about cancel culture. This is important to point out. Cancel culture it evolved from the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement was always, didn't become, but was always a politicized way for women to socially destroy men. It didn't matter if those men did anything wrong. It didn't matter because, even though we have systems in place for that, we have legal systems, we have civil court systems, etc. The Me Too movement did not use that. It skirted around that, and it used female victimhood to destroy the lives of men. Yes, that's what it did. I know that you don't like to hear it, but it's true. So, and from the Me Too movement, we got cancel culture, which was essentially taking the Me Too movement because it essentially accomplished a bunch of reputation destruction, right? And it broadened it out to basically destroy people for any reason. Now you could just say so-and-so said something on social media once that was inappropriate, and now he loses his job, or even she. And after that, they used the Me Too movement to get into positions of authority within various organizations, in the same way that Black Lives Matter did the same. This DEI stuff, this bridge and all that, like, it was probably in the works for a while, but movements like Me Too, Time's Up, BLM, those were all used to fuel the fires, because people, above all, do not want to be considered bigots, so they will do whatever it takes. The most self-hating liberals are white, straight men, and so they will be used as weapons, and because they bend the knee to this shit, it continues to grow. So don't get it twisted. Me Too movement was never about women victims. It was never about victims at all. It used it. It used it to get power. It doesn't mean there were never any victims. What I'm saying is it was a tool first and foremost. It was a hammer, and everything else was a nail. Okay, so what we are experiencing now with DEI and cancel culture, it is downstream from the Me Too movement. But how was it possible that there was a Me Too movement at all? Well, this article might be the answer. This is from a friend of mine named Mike Buchanan, and it is called Cancel Culture is Girl Culture. Lawmakers should reject feminist calls for censorship. Cancel culture is girl culture. April 10th, 2024, feminists around the world are lobbying intensively to enact so-called hate speech laws. But gender activists never mention that women typically are the perpetrators of online harassment, and men are more likely to be the targets. Numerous studies document the fact that women are more likely to support restrictions on free speech. Psychologist Corey Clark concludes, across decades, topics, and studies, women are the most censorious. They're more censorious than men. One, the most aggressive form of censorship, often referred to as cancel culture, typically is perpetuated by women. In Cancel Culture is Girl Culture, British writer Louise Perry reveals, quote, the weird thing about our culture of silencing dissidents is how extremely girly it is, end quote. Not weird, Louise Perry. That's always been the case. Reputation destruction, social destruction is the tool used by women. It's always been the tool going back way before the internet, way before like the idea of, women who would gather together to engage in reputation destruction was not new. It is old. It goes back before Victorian times. You can trace it back to Rome, okay? But the problem is that we have not allowed ourselves to see it as something that could happen. Canadian journalist Tara Henley explains provocatively, when I think back to the online mobbings I've witnessed in recent years, I have to admit that many of the main actors were women. UN Women is a leading proponent of hate speech laws. But a review of the UN Women reports about online harassment reveals that they are factually dishonest for 3 reasons. 1, the Pew Research Center reveals that among persons under 30 years of age, 43% are men compared to 38% of women have experienced online harassment, but UN Women never acknowledges this fact. So most of it is men, okay? UN Women does not highlight the fact that women are more likely to be the persons to engage in harassment. UN Women illogically concludes that women are, quote, disproportionately, end quote, affected by online harassment. Ignoring these facts, feminists are advocating for hate speech laws around the world, but bans on free speech represent a dangerous step towards totalitarian control, which they're totally fine with. And look, Mike Buchanan is in the UK, so the UK doesn't have a First Amendment. We in the United States do, but it's constantly under threat. I mean, constantly under threat. And we have to remain vigilant to protect our free speech. Nothing else matters if we don't have that, okay? And in the UK, they don't have that. In England, they don't have it. There has been terrible hate speech laws passed in Scotland and Ireland. In Wales, probably, I don't really know. Australia, none of these places have free speech. I mean, like in England, you can get arrested for catcalling, supposedly. It's in the law. Like in Scotland, you can get arrested for boasting about sexual conquests in public. Like seriously, you can be in the pub with your mates and brag about, and it's always like going only one direction. Like if women brag about like sexual conquests of men, that's not illegal, but men doing it could be. This is in the law. During the COVID era, for example, persons who exercise their free speech rights to question mandates for social distancing, masking, and vaccinations were strongly criticized, prosecuted, and even jailed. As a result, the disruptive closure of churches, businesses, and schools was allowed to continue for over 2 years. In contrast, Sweden encouraged open debate about its COVID policies. Public health authorities shunned coercive measures and promoted voluntary approaches. A recent analysis reveals that compared to other countries, Sweden enjoyed lower excess death rates, the economy expanded, and school children did not experience any learning loss. Around the world, free speech advocates are speaking out in opposition to hate speech policies. Last week in Scotland, famed author J.K. Rowling spoke out in open defiance of the country's new Hate and Public Order Act. Lawmakers should reject feminist calls for totalitarian hate speech laws. Email UNWomen at media.team@unwomen.org. I will give you guys a link to this article. And I think it tells you something you probably already know. The same kind of things. The reason why this is on this channel is because the same attitude exists amongst the journalists and activists and community managers and HR departments involved with our entire gaming industry. And they have no respect for freedom. They're not interested. They only care about control because they think that they will always hold the levers of power, and they also have the foolish and naive idea that they will only use it for good, and that that it could never bite them in the ass. And so, if they're not going to act like adults, then we will have to act like adults. Ironically, as a cartoon, Vivian James. But anyway, so thank you. Shout out to Mike Buchanan for writing this up. I will include a link in the description. Thanks for humoring me with this for a moment. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. And let's get me to 500 subscribers. Really appreciate it. I may do a stream later today where I'll be playing some retro games, and hopefully I'll see you guys there. So please like, share, subscribe, and long live Vivian.